Good afternoon and welcome to our jointly organised IFST Food Regulatory and Food Science and Nutrition Special Interest Groups webinar on working towards standards in AI, artificial intelligence. I'm Eugenia and I'm representing IFST today as a joint chair of this session alongside Dr. Terry Grasby, where we are the events leads of the two respective IFST special interest groups. In today's session, we'll be exploring the use of AI. Over the years, we have seen its use really grow and expand, from generating content, developing nutrition and health claims, to personalised nutrition. The webinar gives an opportunity to hear about an overview of the different types of AI and modelling techniques, AI standards, the role of data science and applications to food, to hear how AI is being applied, potential risks and enforcement, as well as its practical application at an industry level. We will hear how AI can be used creatively, effectively and responsibly from a food, applied nutrition and a regulatory perspective, whilst ensuring consumer protection. Just a few notes on housekeeping. This webinar is being recorded and will be uploaded to the IFST's Webinar Hub. Feel free to make comments and ask questions throughout the webinar using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screens. Also, there's a feature where you'll be able to upvote other people's questions by clicking on the like button next to their question. There'll also be a Q&A session after the presentation where we'll respond to as many of these questions as possible. I'm very pleased to be able to introduce our speakers today. Dr. Spencer Thomas is Principal Scientist in Digital Health and AI and is the Area Science Leader for Data Analytics and Modelling at the National Physical Laboratory, where he's been part of the data science group since 2019. His expertise includes AI applications in digital health, in particular medical imaging and multimodal datasets, trustworthy machine learning and AI. He's co-authored over 75 peer-reviewed publications and reports. He's part of an AI think tank for medical imaging and in UK government working groups. We have two speakers from the ASA today. I'd like to introduce Carrie Speer and also Adam Davison. Carrie Speer is Senior Investigations Executive and has been part of the ASA's investigations team since 2010. From 2013, she specialised in the advertising rules for food and drink, including health and nutrition claims, ads for products high in fat, sugar or salt, and she manages the casework and provides technical advice and training. Adam Davison is Head of Data Science at the ASA and joined the ASA in 2021. He leads the data science team, which develops AI and machine learning solutions to support the regulatory work of the ASA. He comes with a background in academic research with a doctorate in physics, and prior to joining the ASA, he has led data science and insights teams for The Economist and also for online retail. Our industry speaker today is Dr. Danielle McCarthy, who's the Chief Health Officer at Speer, where she leads the development of robust AI-driven solutions to support healthier decision-making across the food system. She's also Honorary Professor of Practice at Queen's University Belfast. As an applied nutrition scientist, Danielle has held senior roles across the food sector, including Head of Nutrition at Sainsbury's and Principal Scientist at GSK. So we have an exciting speaker lineup, and I'm also very pleased to be co-chairing with Terry today. My background is as a nutritionist, and I've spent the past 10 years in regulatory compliance and operational roles across the consumer industry, including GSK as regulatory strategist. I will now hand over to Terry to give her introduction and take us through the format of the webinar.
So hopefully everybody can see that. I'm Dr. Terry Gresby, lecturing food science at the University of Surrey. As Eugenia mentioned, I'm the events lead for the Food Science and Nutrition SIG. I've been working in academia for 20 years. Originally a chemist, my current interests are mainly in dietary fibre and polysaccharides and how they affect nutrient bioaccessibility. Obviously, as an academic, I'm constantly encountering the output of generative AI in our students' essays, and similarly to the scientific journals like food chemistry, universities don't generally outlaw AI, but it needs to be cited and validated rather than blindly accepted. And there are suggestions that overuse can hinder students' learning of content, but prompt engineering is a skill in itself and something that we might all need to learn soon to maintain productivity. I'm going to take you through the format of today's webinar, which is a bit new, and then give you a very brief overview of AI to help the later talks. So this is a new format for our SIGs and for IFST. We'd love to hear how well you think it worked in the feedback form. You'll be asked to complete at the end of the webinar. Firstly, you will have been given access to a recorded video by Dr. Spencer Thomas on metrology, AI and applications to food. Don't worry if you didn't watch it. I'll be giving a very brief overview of different types of AI based on Spencer's video before we start the main presentations. And his video will be made available to IFST members after the webinar, so you can go back to it later. After the overview, we'll start with the main presentations, the first of which will be a double act between Adam Davison and Carrie Speer from ASA, giving the regulators' perspective on AI. And this will be immediately followed by Danielle McCarthy from Spoon Guru talking about AI-powered nutrition intelligence, both of which will be about 15 minutes, leaving us about 20 minutes for questions. As noted, please use the Q&A feature within Zoom to ask questions, and note that Spencer will be available to answer more general questions about AI as well. So I've managed to cram quite a lot of information into this one slide on AI. It's an umbrella term that can include statistical learning, machine learning, and other techniques as well, so it's quite difficult to define. Statistical learning is foundational for the other models. It uses mathematical and statistical processes that learn to model data based on assumptions and expectations. Machine learning, or ML, incorporates statistical learning and other techniques, so fewer assumptions are needed. There are various different models that are used: discriminative and generative neural networks, clustering, and support vector machines. These may be supervised, unsupervised, or reinforcement models. With supervised learning, you have data labeled by the user. The model then predicts features that lead to that label using a training set. The model is validated using a set of test data. Unsupervised learning does not have data labels already. It's generally looking for patterns to identify clusters and associations or group data together, and this is often used for data discovery. Reinforcement is more of an action reward-based system, perhaps with the model interacting with an environment or a computer game and getting feedback. It's often used in things like robotics. Transformers are a more complex form again, often used to carry out language-based tasks, allowing the use of natural language prompts or other inputs to produce different outputs, including generative pre-trained transformers or GPTs. While discriminative AI has been around for quite a while, generative AI has taken off more recently due to the large data sets required for training. It is also an umbrella term that is difficult to define, but they are now commonly used to produce text, images, music, videos, code, and research. Large language models, LLMs, that you may have heard of include ChatGPT, Claude, Copilot, DeepSeek, Gemini, and Grok. Some of these are now capable of producing more than one type of output and therefore should technically be called large multimodal models, or LMMs. Popular text-to-image models are DALL-E, Midjourney, and Stable Diffusion. For text-to-video, there are Sora and Veo. Obviously, these are not definitive lists or meant to be an endorsement in any way. The production of images, audio and video does bring up issues surrounding so-called deep fakes, which is a real concern. However, there are already standards and regulations to help maintain the integrity of AI use. So there are AI-specific standards relating to management systems, risk management, data quality, and assessment of performance and robustness. And of course, the broader standards relating to quality management, such as ISO 9001, also still apply. So you have to think about security, data processing, software life cycles, and user documentation as well. In terms of regulations, the EU AI Act has defined 4 levels of risk for AI systems: minimal, limited, high, and unacceptable. High-risk models may pose serious risk to health, safety, or fundamental rights, and this, of course, includes food processing and packaging. There is therefore a need for adequate risk assessment and mitigation systems, high-quality data sets to feed into the system to avoid bias and logging of activity to ensure traceability. NPL, along with BSI and the Alan Turing Institute, have been developing risk management frameworks for trustworthy AI. And if you go to Spencer's video, you will see there are links to various resources there. So for now, I will hand over to Carrie, Speer and Adam Davison to give a regulator's perspective on AI.
Thanks, Terry. Yes, as Terry said, Carrie and I are going to give a little bit of an overview of our perspective on AI as the advertising regulator, and also the intersection between how we're using AI and the world of food, essentially. So I'm going to open by talking for a minute about the ASA's general position in relation to AI. So for anyone who's not familiar with us, the Advertising Standards Authority is the UK's independent advertising regulator. We're a non-statutory regulator funded by a levy on the advertising industry. Our overall mission is to make every UK ad a responsible ad. Our goal is to increase trust in advertising, protect consumers, and also deliver a level playing field for all legitimate advertisers. AI is important to us because the ad industry has always been an early adopter of machine learning and AI technologies historically. So in the way that some other regulators might be able to sit back and see what's coming, that's not really the case for us. Recent advances in generative AI are already being applied. There are live adverts right now that are using generative AI. So we need to make sure that we have a position on that. That potentially creates new regulatory challenges for us. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. But equally, data and AI are powerful tools that we can make use of to make our regulation more effective, efficient, and proportionate. And we've been doing that in a couple of ways. Sometimes we engage in projects where we look to collect quantitative data about how people are being exposed to content and make sure that we're baking that into the way that we prioritize. But a big part of the way that we've been using data and the focus of my team's work at the ASA is something called the active ad monitoring system. So over the past few years, we've put a huge amount of investment into building our own AI-based tooling in-house to proactively monitor online advertising. The essential challenge that we face with online advertising is there's a lot of it out there. You can't expect a team of experts to review millions of adverts every day. They really, you need some assistance as a regulator to understand what's out there and to try to help you prioritize the stuff that's most worthy of your experts' attention. So the system that we've been working on over the past few years essentially composes of these 3 steps. 1, a set of tools that can go out and capture ads at scale from a variety of different sources across all the main online channels, social media, search and display, using a mix of public and non-public data. And then once we brought in a big collection of ads that are relevant to a topic that we're working on, using machine learning and AI to filter that collection of ads down to the things that are most likely to be relevant, and sometimes the things that we think it might break a particular aspect of the rules that we're very concerned about. And then finally, passing those over to experts for review. So the key here is that we're not trying to use AI to replace the decision-making of experts. A lot of advertising regulation is very nuanced. A lot of it is about consumer interpretation. AI is not great where you want to think about how a diverse group of people might perceive an ad. But what it is good is making sure that your experts are spending their time on those cases that sit close to the edge of the rules, where you think it needs that thinking, and not having them wade through thousands of potentially problematic ads. So over the past few years, we've been on a journey to adopt this technology into our regulation, including in our work on food and nutrition, as Carrie will talk about in a second. But we're applying it to a wide range of high priority topics across the ASA. So that's things like weight loss injectables is a big topic at the moment. Things where there's potential for significant harm. So things like alcohol and gambling advertising, and a really wide range of other areas. And I'll just sort of end this section with a few numbers. As we've scaled up, this has really gone from a few years ago something quite experimental for us to something that's quite core to the way that we operate today. So last year our systems processed 28 million unique ads. The ASA published 41 rulings off the back of intelligence that came from these kind of AI-based systems. So 15% of all the published rulings last year were ads that we found as a result of this proactive monitoring, not through complaints from the public. And also very large numbers of ads that our compliance team had withdrawn as a result of intelligence that came from those systems as well. So obviously we've got limited time here, but just to give you a flavour that AI really is becoming core to the way the ASA regulates. And now I'm going to hand over to Carrie to talk a little bit about some of the work we've been doing on food specifically.
Cheers, Adam. So the advertising codes include rules that are focused specifically on the advertising of food and drink, and that includes supplements. There are also rules that relate to specific categories of food, such as products that are high in fat, salt or sugar, so HFSS. And so far, our use of tech to monitor and take action on non-compliant food ads has focused on two areas. The first is the targeting of HFSS product ads. So these ads mustn't be directed at people under 16 through the selection of media or the context in which they appear. And no medium should be used to advertise HFSS products if more than 25% of the audience is under 16. Also, ads that are targeted through their content at under 12s mustn't include a promotion or a licensed character or celebrity. So our proactive work in this area started in 2019, where we used avatars to mimic the profiles of children online. It's not really AI as such, but it was important in developing the ASA's use of tech in dealing with online advertising. The second area we focused on, and this time using the active ad monitoring system, relates to the use of medicinal claims and health claims for food supplements. So it's prohibited to make a medicinal claim, and that includes claims to prevent, treat or cure a disease for a food or food supplement. Those claims are covered by rules relating both to foods and to medicines, because a food product will be classified as a medicine by presentation if medicinal claims are made about it. There is, of course, scope to make health claims about foods and supplements. So, for example, something like vitamin C contributes to the normal function of the immune system, but those claims can only be made if they're already authorised on the Great Britain Nutrition and Health Claims Register, and if they're used in relation to the sort of specific nutrient. So, next slide, cheers, Adam. So if we kick off with the avatar work, in 2019, we published our first report on our use of avatar tech to get a snapshot of compliance with the rules on the targeting of HFSS ads online. So the avatars simulated children's online profiles through cookies, although it's important to note that they didn't simulate the actual behaviour of children online. So the avatars visited websites and YouTube channels where more than 25% of the audience were children, so children's media. Only 2.3% of the ads that we saw were for HFSS products, and a high proportion of those were for foods that wouldn't really be of a particular interest to children, but if they were HFSS, it was still a problem. So we engaged with the businesses to ensure that they would comply with those rules in future. And then in 2021, we followed that up with some more avatar work, but we principally focused that time on dynamically served HFSS ads in non-logged in mixed age media. So that's where children were less than 25% of the audience. So because the media wasn't targeted to children, it wouldn't necessarily be a breach of our rules for an HFSS ad to appear. But in that media, advertisers must still take care to target ads, dynamically served ads towards adults and away from children. So over 3 weeks, our avatars were dynamically served 182 HFSS ads. The ads were generally distributed evenly to adult and child avatars, so there wasn't evidence that children were being actively targeted. We also at that point checked in on a selection of children's media as we'd done in 2019 and found that HFSS advertisers were mostly successful in targeting their ads away from children's media. But again, any ads that raised concerns, we followed up with those advertisers. Adam, next slide, please. So our first group of rulings where we used the active ad monitoring system to find ads relating to claims for food supplements came out of a general sweep of health and wellbeing related claims in paid social media ads. That sweep identified various trends covering all sorts of products. And so we considered which to focus on based on our prioritization criteria and as well as the focus that our strategy places on protecting vulnerable people. One theme we chose to take forward as a group of investigations related to claims that supplements could help with anxiety. So we chose ads from 6 advertisers which covered the key claims that were made across the wider set of ads that we saw. Something that we often see if a supplement advertiser references a medical condition, they often will reference more than one, and they'll also include different types of health claims. And so as a result, the 6 rulings covered off claims to treat anxiety and associated references to stress, but also claims to help depression and acne. And so all of those are claims, prohibited claims that a food could prevent, treat or cure disease. The ads also included a range of unauthorized health claims, and those most frequently were about sort of helping focus, energy, memory and cognitive function. That same sweep of ads that resulted in those rulings also identified a theme of ads featuring claims to help resolve symptoms of the menopause. So thanks, Adam. So we published 5 rulings about supplements making these claims. The menopause itself isn't seen as a medical condition, but claims to help resolve the adverse symptoms of menopause, such as hot flushes, night sweats, brain fog, fatigue, mood changes, those are all medicinal claims. And for those claims, we can apply the code rule that prohibits claims that a food can prevent, treat or cure a disease. One of the ads also included health claims. The supplement did contain nutrients that meant the ad could include authorised health claims relating to normal immune function and normal cognitive function, but the wording used in the ad exaggerated the meaning of those claims. A couple of the ads also included claims that referred to a rate or amount of weight loss, and those are claims that are prohibited for foods and supplements. And then talking about weight loss, that leads us nicely to our most recent group of rulings. So intelligence from a range of sources at the beginning of this year suggested that all the attention that we've seen around prescription-only medicines that are used for weight loss had prompted some advertisers to prey on vulnerable consumers by suggesting their supplements would have similar effects to GLP-1 agonist injections. And so we used the active ad monitoring system to find specific examples. The 5 rulings we published covered claims that stated or implied that supplements could aid the body's production of GLP-1, or that the supplement would have the same effects as GLP-1. So that's not just weight loss, but appetite and craving control or quieting food noise. The ads also directly compared the effects of the supplements with those of prescription-only medicines such as Ozempic, sometimes even suggesting they would provide the weight loss benefits while not causing some of the perceived side effects, as you can see in this image from one of the ads. As you might expect, a couple of the ads also included claims that the supplements would result in specific or amounts or rates of weight loss. And they also included recommendations or endorsements from people presented as health professionals, and those claims are also prohibited both for foods and for medicines. And next slide, please, Adam. So here's just a quick graph to see the impact that the use of the active ad monitoring system has had on the number of rulings relating to food ads in the past couple of years. If you give it another click, Adam. We have got another 9 investigations ongoing at the moment. So we're hoping to publish some more rulings by the end of the year. We're looking currently at topics where claims to treat ADHD and autism, and claims to treat prostate issues. So now back to Adam.
Thanks very much. So yeah, I think Carrie's given you an overview of how we're applying our AI technology to the regulation of food and supplements in particular. I'm just going to spend our final 2 minutes touching on the other side of AI in relation to our regulation, which is the use of generative AI in ads, which I imagine might be of interest to some of the people on the call. As I said earlier, generative AI is already widespread in advertising. So it's important that the ASA has a position on how we feel about that, whether we think that's a problem. And the short answer is that because the codes are media neutral, we ultimately hold advertisers responsible for the content of their ads, regardless of the method used to create them. From the ASA's perspective, generative AI isn't any more inherently harmful than, say, Photoshop is. You know, in the same way that you could use Photoshop to produce an ad that gives a misleading impression of the effects of your cosmetic product, you know, you can do the same with generative AI. It's ultimately up to you to make sure that you're being responsible in the content that you show to consumers. Now, so essentially, we want to have a proportionate position on generative AI. We want to work with industry to be able to get the benefits of those tools. But we do recognise that there might be some specific risks related to generative AI, and we want to make sure that the industry is also putting in place the right processes to ensure that those risks are managed. So if anyone's interested in more detail on this, there's an article on our website published a couple of years ago now, actually. That's how early we set out this position. and this is one of the quotes from it. We regulate ads based on how the consumers will interpret them, which is not impacted by the means used to generate that specific piece of content. I'm just going to talk for 1 minute about where we do see risks. One of the risks of generative AI is not that it can inherently do different things, it's that it makes certain things easier. So I do think we will see situations where people who maybe haven't got as much experience of regulation or advertising rules producing ads that they might not have been able to produce otherwise. And I think this is where you've got to be careful, because generative AI, one of the things that it does is, like the name suggests, it generates, right? So it will fill in details, it will invent things for you in your adverts. And that can have a variety of problems. It can introduce bias is one of the things, and stereotypes, for example. There's some famous articles that people have probably seen where if you ask a generative AI tool to give you a picture of a judge, it will tend to show you a white man, for example. But it can also be misleading. It can also create details that weren't there in the original product. I'm going to show you a very quick example to round off now of how you might accidentally use generative AI tools to create something that's risky from a regulatory perspective. I'm just going to ask for a nice social media ad for my chicken nuggets that I've been making in my house recently. It should show the process of them being made. Okay, what does ChatGPT come back? That's quite a nice ad, actually. Okay, maybe this isn't, if my agency came back with this, I might be a little disappointed. But for 5 minutes on my own as a one-man band, this isn't bad. But immediately, there's quite a lot of detail that's been created here by the tool. For example, I didn't really specify what the ingredients of my chicken nuggets were. I didn't really specify how they were being made. Does this imply that they're handmade? Could do. I'm not a food specialist. Carrie would know better than me, but it does look like it implies they're made out of chicken breast, for example, which is not something that I specified. And if that's not true, then that could be misleading. So, we've only got a couple of minutes. It's obviously a really deep topic, but I just wanted to sort of give that little illustration and outline our position. We don't think generative AI is inherently problematic. But if you use it without thinking about the consequences and remembering that you are responsible for the content that you produce as an advertiser, and that, generative AI is not a get out of jail card. You can't say, oh, well, the AI made it for me. You've got to remember those things. And as long as you do that, then there's no reason why you can't be using generative AI in your adverts, basically. And that's it from us. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam and Carrie. That was really interesting. I'm just going to share my screen now and talk through another example of how we use AI and what we do. Can everybody see my screen okay? Okay, so my name's Danielle McCarthy and I'm Chief Health Officer at Speer. And what I wanted to talk through with you today was how, as a nutritionist, so I am not an AI expert, I am an applied nutritionist that works within a company that utilises AI. And I think that's really important. Similar to what Adam has said, our technology isn't about replacing nutritionists, it's actually about scaling their expertise, and AI helps us make sure that we can more easily find where our expertise is going to add the most value. So I'll talk through how we use AI from a nutritionist perspective, but also going into some detail about how that AI helps us and how we integrate our expertise within our systems. And I'll also bring out some examples to bring it to life in terms of what it's helped us discover and what the usefulness is of this AI within the retail setting. Because to say up front, in terms of what Speer do, we work with our clients who are retailers to help them improve their search and discovery for their consumers when it comes to specific health and nutrition areas. So first of all, I think it's really, really important to say that you can't be tech or AI ready at all if you haven't got good data and you're not data ready. So the first and foremost, what we do is use our system to clean and optimize unstructured data to create that really solid foundation. So one of the real challenges around food and nutrition is accessing data. It can be very time consuming. There can be come in lots of different formats, come from lots of different sources. So the first thing is about using technology to be able to gather very unstructured data and format it in a way that it can be used. So, and that can be data from packaged products. It can also be data from products that aren't packaged and things like recipes. So that in and of itself is a really important starting point, is to collect that data. Then it's not enough just to have that data. we have to quality check that data. And this is where the technology and AI that we use can be really helpful for our team of experts. So we have 7 registered nutritionists that work at Speer, and I would say we work alongside technology in our roles to really be able to look at the quality of that data in the first instance. So things like missing data, of which there is lots within food and nutrition data, that can be easily identified and directed towards our experts to be able to help resolve and fill that data appropriately, or not, dependent on what, from an expertise point of view, we think is appropriate. Errors can be identified, so we can work with our engineers to set up validators to be able to identify to our team of experts when we think that there could be a mistake in that data. So say, for example, 20,000 grams of salt in one portion in a recipe, we would be able to, that's where the machine comes in to help us identify this looks like it's an error, and can we get that checked for human expert clarification. One of the other challenges that we have been able to use technology to help us with is there is the nutrient profiling model, and Carrie talked through about HFSS, and the nutrient profiling model in the UK is the calculation which underpins that classification as to whether or not food is HFSS or not. One of the challenges that exists there is that part of that calculation requires the amount of fruit, vegetables and nuts to be entered into that calculation, and that is an area where there's a lot of different ways of doing that, and actually what our tool has been able to do is, by utilising AI, is be able to look at the data that is available and enrich that to be able to, at a SKU by SKU level, estimate the amount of fruit, veg and nuts. And we see this as much more appropriate than maybe putting a 0 value in or using a category average. There are ways in which, as experts, we can work alongside technology tools to be able to enrich data in ways to actually drive accuracy in some of those calculations, which is really exciting, because we wouldn't have the capacity to do that. If you're thinking about the amount of data exists in one of our retailers, there would be no way with the teams available of human experts, as talented as what we all are, to be able to do that at the scale that we can do it, continually using the AI to help. So once we have enriched data and quality data, then that's when we are in a position to be able to think about what we can do with that data, and how we can apply at scale digitalized labels, or we refer to them as tags. So these can then be used by our retailer clients to help with health reporting, to help with health signposting, to employ in an integrated way their health strategies, which we know from behavioural science that actually multi-component interventions are the things that are most likely to deliver behavioural change. So by having a digitalised label on different products that meet certain criteria as approved by nutritionists and aligned to regulations, that can be a way in which you can help deliver these integrated deployments in an efficient way, and indeed then also help product developers understand what different gaps there might be, where there are different opportunities that they can fill. My next slide goes through just to kind of bring to life some of the examples that our AI can help us identify. As I said, there's so much data that is available that alone our experts couldn't do this. So what can be sent to our team for checking is things like when there is conflicts within data. So we've seen and see quite a lot data received that might say it's suitable for vegans on the statement, but actually in the ingredients there's pork rind. Equally, things like whole egg can be found, certain different ingredients, milk, certain flavourings that contain milk can actually be in the ingredient deck alongside a statement that says it's suitable for vegans. So actually that AI within the solution can really help capture those errors and resolve them before any type of attributes and digitalised attributes would be applied to products, and therefore keeping the consumers safe and making sure that no data errors leads to unintended consequences, which can of course be significant when we're thinking about allergies. Just to give you a little bit more information to kind of think about how we do this and go under the bonnet, as I would like to say. How do we do this? Well, in the simplest way of describing it, we can segment and tokenize all of the data points. So you can see from the slide that means we can segment all of the information that exists on ingredients, all of the information that exists on the statements that are available on pack data, or within recipe descriptions, for example, and all of the different nutrients and nutrient information that is available. By being able to separate out all of that information, the system can then utilize those tokenized data points to apply the criteria in a way that our policies define. And it's really important to say that those policies are defined by experts. So those are experts in nutrition and regulations, so that we can make sure that our criteria, as Carrie talked about, in terms of if you're making a nutrient claim, there is really clear criteria on how you should do that. So, for example, if we want to assign a tag that says high fiber, we can make sure that the criteria is based on and applied to only those products that have greater than or equal to 6 grams per 100 grams or greater than or equal to 3 grams per 100 kilocalories. So it's a really useful way for us to be able to apply consistent rigor at scale to the assignment of these tags and make sure that they always align with the regulations. Of course, then there will be anomalies that are pulled out from there. And again, like I described in the previous slide, they come to our team to look at and to resolve. And it's at that stage then that the product is sent back to the system with its appropriate digitalized tag on. It's important to kind of say that there can be a lot of conflicts that can exist in data. For example, you can have crisps that are chicken flavoring as an ingredient, but they also might have a suitable for vegetarian statement. So those are the type of conflicts as well that the system can bring to our attention to make sure that actually is that flavoring really suitable for vegetarians or not. And once verified, then the product will be sent to the system. And to have a little think about, you know, what's the advantage of this? I'll just use a terminology that an American lady that we've worked with had said was, you know, the real estate on pack, especially for packaged products, and in certain, you know, recipes and things, it can be quite limited in terms of the amount of information that can be provided. And so you can end up in a situation where you have to only be able, you know, you're limited on what you can put on a label within a product. So it might be that vegetarian and vegan are seen as the priority claims in which to put on a product. But actually, hopefully you can start to begin to see how, if we can have these digitalized labels that are appropriately defined and criteria accurately applied, you can see how it can really help with the search and discovery of products. So this product could also actually have various other attributes which we can then digitally apply. And that in that way helps make sure that people who are trying to find, for example, low salt products can find all of the products that appeal to them and not just those products that have chosen to label themselves as such. One of the other issues I've mentioned already is, you know, resolving some of the complex challenges that come from a nutrition point of view. And often this is the case when we want to think about multiple nutrients, different food groups. As a nutritionist, this is really, really important that we just don't define health by one nutrient. But actually food groups are not explicitly stated on pack. There can be, as I've said before, missing and very poor quality when it comes to certain ingredients or certain food groups. And there can be inconsistencies in the approaches to the calculation of MPM, and we know that inconsistencies is something obviously that we want to avoid. So actually by using a tech solution that works to make sure that you start with data that is of high quality and ready to be used, you can then apply different algorithms to be able to apply a consistent methodology to calculate certain food group scores, which obviously can then help us make sure that we're encouraging and defining healthy in ways that are as appropriate as possible from a nutritionist perspective. And, you know, it's not without saying that automation in which that can be applied and the scale at which then those insights can be brought to life is beyond any kind of human scale that we could do ourselves. So that is really, really helpful in terms of efficiencies as well. So just really to bring it to a close, here there, if you think about, you get your quality data, you can define using your experts within your business the criteria that you want to apply to some of that data, and make sure that there is always that expert in the loop check. I think that is really, really important. But what's the purpose of that? Well, I've talked about, initially we developed this system to be able to help with retailers being able to filter which products are appropriate for certain consumer needs. Now, as we move forward, there are lots of different apps, there are loyalty programs, always new things. We've talked about generative AI. I think what's really, really important is that we have to make sure that they're underpinning all of these things. It comes back to that expert, and that it's kind of an example, hopefully, to show you where you can apply expertise at scale working within the systems of AI, and that's certainly what we do. And it's then meant that we as nutritionists and nutritionists that we work with in retail can be present at lots of different points of a consumer's journey. So it really helps us scale our expertise and make sure that it's in the right place at the right time. So hopefully that's been interesting, and that's the end of my presentation. So I shall hand over to Eugenia to take on the question and answers.
So I think as we are close to time now, I'll thank everyone for their questions, and our speakers have said that they're happy to answer any questions that might occur to you in the next sort of hour or two when you actually sort of have a chance to really absorb everything over your lunch. Myself and Eugenia obviously want to say thank you so much to our presenters for this webinar. We have learned a huge amount, and it just reminds you of sort of how many different applications AI can have, and hopefully, some of them more positive than just sort of cheating on some essays here or there. So thank you also to our SIG team and obviously IFST, who are working behind the scenes. And thank you for everyone attending. We will have a short survey being sent out immediately after the webinar. Please feel free to fill that out, and especially let us know if you like this type of format with Spencer's pre-recorded video ahead of time. But that all that remains now is me to say thank you, everybody, and goodbye.